Because this is a fairly large PDF, I won't be able to show you everything, but I'm just going to try to manipulate the screen to focus on what I believe is the most important aspect of the behavioral question. Well, actually, what I believe are the two most important aspects of a behavioral interview response. Number one, you have to know the cue or the indicator that you are receiving a behavioral question. So when you are in the interview and the interviewer asks you a question that starts with the phrase, tell me about a time when, or give me example of, or describe a situation in which, if the question starts with language that sounds like what I just said, that's your indication or your cue that you're about to receive a behavioral question. Because as we heard from the chats, they want to hear an example of something that happened to you in the past and a summary of how you responded so that they can have some form of evidence of what you would do in their organization in the future. So that's the number one thing. You need to know what to listen for to be prepared for the correct answer. Okay, now let's talk about how to structure the answer. Once you've identified that the interviewer has given you a behavioral question, you will use what we call the STAR method to answer the question. STAR. That is an acronym that summarizes the four components of your answer. S represents situation, T represents task, A represents action, and R represents results. For those of you who are familiar, hopefully this will be a helpful refresh. For those of you who aren't familiar, no worries. This is why you're here to learn it. So, the reason why you need to use the STAR format in your answer is because when you begin to respond to the question, let's say, for example, the question is, tell me about a time when you went out of your way to help a coworker or a teammate. The tell me about a time gives you your indication that this is a behavioral question. But when you start to answer, it is very easy to become disorganized. It's very easy to not know whether or not you're saying enough. And it's very easy to not know whether or not you're saying enough. So you follow STAR so that your answer is very organized, it's clear, and the recruiter or the interviewer can follow along with you and get a good summary of the skills that you want to communicate. So, the situation, S, that's the first part, and that is the shortest part of your answer. You should not spend a lot of time describing the situation. In the example question that I gave, tell me about a time when you went out of your way to help a teammate. The situation might be last semester during one of my lab classes. That's it. That's all you need to say for situation. Or if you said a year ago during an internship, you just want to tell them where this occurred, okay? Then you quickly move on to T, the task. Task basically summarizes the core problem that you had to solve in that situation or the core of what you needed to accomplish. So, going back to my example of a time when I went out of my way to help a teammate, situation last semester during my lab class, task. I had a teammate that was responsible for booking the lab space so that our group could work together on our experiment. However, this teammate consistently didn't secure lab space in a timely manner, and it caused our group to fall behind every week. I gave a little bit more detail, but it's still fairly brief. I want the recruiter to understand, or the interviewer, I want them to understand What was the problem that I needed to resolve in this particular question? Then I move on to A, the action. Now, a few things to keep in mind about action. The majority of what you say in the answer should be within the action section, because this is the place where you are going to give that interviewer a sample of how you've successfully conducted yourself in the past so that they can envision you doing those same things in their organization. Okay. Now, for my example, I'm describing a team situation. You all, please listen to me very carefully on this part. If your example happens to involve a team, it is critical that you focus on your specific contributions to the team, both as a career advisor and back when I was a campus recruiter. One of the biggest mistakes that students would make is they would say, my team did, or we did. They want to hear, I did, I did, I did. Okay. And remember, you're not taking credit away from your team. You're not going to come across as arrogant or as though you were the only person who worked hard. Just think of it as you're focusing on what you specifically did to help your team succeed. So, going back to my example, I would say the way that I handled the situation in which my teammate was consistently failing to secure the appropriate lab space was I reached out to my teammate directly so that she wouldn't feel embarrassed. And I invited her to chat with me about the problem. I let her know that the team was starting to struggle because we couldn't get lab space on time. And I asked her if there was something that was preventing her from securing the lab space on time. My teammate shared with me that she was a little bit overwhelmed between our project responsibilities and other classes. And so I proactively offered to switch roles with her so that I would then become the person who would secure the team's lab space. And I knew that I could secure the space in a timely manner. My teammate expressed appreciation for me reaching out to her. She agreed for us to make the switch. And I took over that role and was able to make sure that the team's lab space was secured on time. Notice what I did. I always talked about my specific actions, reaching out to the teammate proactively, listening, asking if there was a way that I could help, offering to switch the responsibilities. Those were all things that I did. So please, if you don't take anything else away from this workshop, when you're describing the action of your behavioral interview question, you have to focus on what you did. And then finally, the results. This is a fairly short part of the answer as well. You have to conclude the experience by telling what happened. So I might say, as a result of taking the time to speak with my lab mate and to offer a solution, she was able to do a better job of fulfilling the responsibilities that she picked up. I was able to ensure that our team never missed our lab space reservations again, and we were able to move forward in a productive way. Okay. So that's the overall gist of how you need to answer the question in the moment. Let me also say something briefly about the results. It is not necessary for the result to be positive, okay? Especially because it's important for you to talk about real life experiences that you've had. Not every situation in work or in life is going to turn out the way that we would plan. You will have experiences, and I'm sure you have, where things didn't go quite as well as you wanted. So, what do you do if the result isn't that positive? You talk about the lessons that you learned, okay? If, for example, you receive the question, tell me about a time when you made a mistake. By the time you get to the R, the result part, you might not have a positive outcome to share, but that's okay. You can still answer the question in a way that will leave that interviewer with a positive impression about you if you focus on the lessons that you learned. If you focus on how you work to make sure that that mistake didn't happen in the future, okay? Please keep in mind, you all, as students at a university, you are not expected to be perfect in the workplace. You're not expected to graduate and know everything that there is to know about your field. Employers understand that all of us really are still learning and growing, and they're not interested in hiring flawless people. They're interested in hiring people that take responsibility for their actions, that think critically to find the root causes of problems, and then who work hard to fill those gaps and make sure that they don't happen again. And if you answer a question in that way, even if the result wasn't the best, you can still be successful in showing that interviewer that you're somebody that their organization should hire. How do you practice for a behavioral interview? The first thing you need to do is schedule a mock interview with an advisor from ECS. And we have two ways that you can do that. One is scheduling through Handshake. You can book a one on one 30-minute appointment with an advisor, such as myself, and we will practice interviewing with you and try to simulate as realistic of an experience as we can. So I would highly encourage you to do that. The second thing that you can do is you can join us for drop in advising that we have available via Zoom on Tuesdays and Thursdays from noon until 5 p.m. We have a team of upperclassmen that we've trained that would be happy to practice. And the drop ins are a great resource if you get invited to an interview at the last minute. This happens from time to time. A recruiter or an employer might find your resume somehow and try to meet with you within 24 hours, and you maybe didn't have a chance to book an appointment. If you see us on Tuesdays and Thursdays from noon till 5, we've got a team of people that can help you on the spot and give you an opportunity to prepare. And thank you so much. My colleague Kirby just did us all a favor and she put a link to Handshake in the chat room so that you'll know exactly where to go to schedule that appointment. And yes, we'll be putting some information about drop ins in the chat as well. So, another question that came up: how should you answer questions that do not prompt an explanation of a past experience? I will get to that in just a moment. But a question that just came up: are there any behavioral questions that wouldn't be suited for STAR? No. And in fact, I would say you can use STAR for non behavioral questions. For example, if you were asked, what is your top strength? You can still frame that answer using STAR so that, again, when you're speaking, you can remain organized, clear, and concise. Let me try that with you. So if someone asks me, Ulyssia, what would you say is your greatest strength? I'll start with S. In my current role as an advisor in engineering career services, that's S. It's getting me on the track. T, I have the opportunity to create programs that allow my team to effectively provide career development resources to our students. Now I just went into the T. I'm going to move on into the A. In order to effectively create and execute these programs, I've developed a strength of using project management skills to not only anticipate the types of information that our students need, but also to plan the resources, the deadlines, and the milestones that allow me to ensure that all of the information and resources and programs are executed on time. Now we're moving into R. And as a result, our team is able to effectively serve thousands of students, and we contribute to our college's abilities to deliver outcomes in which over 90% of our graduates identify a first destination. So you see, asking me what's my top strength is not a behavioral question, but I could still use STAR in order to organize my answer and not ramble and lose my interviewer's attention as a result. Okay. Um, Thank you, Sam, very much. So, another way to practice, I've forgotten to mention this. I really appreciate Sam putting that in. Again, you can schedule a 30-minute mock interview with an ECS advisor. Number two, you can join us for drop ins on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You don't need an appointment for that. Or number three, as Sam put us on to, you can use Big Interview. One of the nice things about Big Interview is that you can record yourself answering practice questions. As you all know, going through the job search in a pandemic means that the majority of your interviews are going to be virtual. And Big Interview simulates that experience by having you answer questions into a camera. So you can not only evaluate the content of what you're saying, you can also pay attention to things like how does your background look? How does your appearance look? Are you presenting yourself in a way that is what you want an employer to see of you? How's the volume? So I highly recommend that you use Big Interview as well. Another question, if I lack a good story to a specific question, what are the options I have left? First and foremost, you can prepare in a way that minimizes the likelihood that you won't have anything to say. Okay? The first way to prepare is thoroughly review the job posting for the position that you're interviewing for, if you have it available, because the job posting is going to give you information about the attributes or the qualities or the skills that that employer wants. And once you know what the employer wants, you can anticipate what kind of questions they're going to ask. For example, if you're reading a job posting and there's a lot of emphasis on collaboration and teamwork, then you're probably going to get a behavioral interview question that gauges your experiences working on teams. And with that knowledge, you can then prepare answers by thinking about different team experiences that you've had. Another example, if you're reviewing a job posting for in a position that you're interviewing for, and the posting has a lot of language about innovation, being on the cutting edge, developing new ideas, you're probably going to get a question about your ability to be creative and innovative. So before you get into the interview, you should think of examples of when you had to find creative solutions and prepare an answer using the STAR method. Okay. Um, Now, if you truly find yourself getting stuck, and this actually happened to me in my interview for my job with ECS, I was asked a behavioral question, and the situation that the question described was one that I truly had not been in. What I did was I was honest. So let me pause and say something here. Authenticity, saying what you truly believe, is far more effective than trying to say what you think the interviewer wants to hear. Okay. People can tell when you're being phony. People can tell when you're being fake. And they would have a lot more respect for you to speak with integrity than to try to make something up. So I want to strongly discourage you from making up an answer. So let me go back to my experience and tell you what I did. I told the truth and I said, I actually have not found myself in that situation. But let me tell you what I would do so that you can see how my mind works and so that you can see how I would respond to this type of situation within your organization. And I just went step by step, spontaneously through what I would have done. And it worked. And the proof is that I'm here today at ECS. I got the job. So, if you really find yourself in a situation where you cannot think of an experience that you've had, really give the interviewer what they want most, which is to see who you really are and talk through what you would do in that situation. Okay. That's going to be the best thing. Still, if you put in a good amount of practice, hopefully you won't have that happen. Um, Another way to prepare, in addition to mock interviews through ECS appointments, drop ins, and big interview, I would encourage each of you, especially the day before the interview, spend a lot of time looking at your resume and reflecting on every experience, whether it was an internship, a classroom project, a personal project that you worked on, your experiences with RSOs or other student organizations and clubs. Spend a lot of time reviewing each and every experience on your resume and ask yourself the following questions. Ask yourself, what did I like most or what did I enjoy most at this job or at this student organization or at this in this class? What was my proudest moment? What did I accomplish that I feel really good about? What was my greatest challenge in that situation? And how did I overcome it? If you can answer those three questions for everything that's on your resume, I think you'll come up with some authentic examples that you'll be able to naturally share, okay, when you get into an interview. So take the time to really reflect on what you've already done, and you probably will be surprised at how naturally examples come to mind. Okay, we've got some other great information in the chat box. Okay, thank you. Once again, Sam is sharing their experience of just being honest in an interview, but still using the STAR framework. Okay, yes. And so, Nathan, the three questions that you should ask yourself when you're reviewing your resume. Number one, what did you enjoy the most in that situation? Okay. And Kirby, if you're able to capture those, we would greatly appreciate it. First question, what did you enjoy the most? Second question, what was your proudest moment or your biggest accomplishment in that situation? And then the third question, um, what was your biggest challenge in that situation and how did you overcome it? Okay. If you can think through those, you should start remembering examples. And from there, just write out each example in advance using the STAR method. That brings me to another hack. Um, I think all of us, thank you so much, Kirby, for typing that in. All of us, if you've had an interview before, you know how it is to feel nervous. If you haven't had your first interview yet, just prepare yourself. It will happen, but it's okay. Something that I would encourage you to do is, and some of it may depend on what's more natural for you. in this virtual world, I still prefer paper and pens. So even though I'm maybe speaking to you all virtually, I would still encourage you, if you have access to a printer, have a printed copy of your resume next to you, okay? That way, if you get stuck, you can just quickly glance over at your resume and you might just scan through what's on the document and it'll trigger your memory if you're, a little bit stuck with an example. Something else that I've done as a hack to help me remember to use STAR when answering the question on that resume or notebook or sheet of paper, I would just vertically write STAR to help me have something else to look at when I might find myself a bit stuck. It is also very appropriate, if you do it right, to just simply ask the recruiter if you can have a moment to think about the answer. You can also repeat the question back to stall and give yourself some time. Kirby, one of my colleagues and advisors extraordinaire, has a tip that she wants to share with you about how to do this in a virtual setting. So, yes, Kirby, what can we do to practice or to be successful here?
Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to add about virtual interviews. I've been talking with students about some of the common issues. And yes, there are some disadvantages to doing a virtual interview because you can't always see, you can't read the room, you can't feel the energy in that room. But one of the advantages is that you can only see what you want the recruiter to see. So right now, I've got a virtual background. I'm in the cornfields representing my unit and you see my face, and that's it. But I can really use this to my advantage to control how you see me and what your first impression is. So, what you don't know is maybe I've got a little glass of water over here, or I've got, like what my colleague said, maybe I have my resume printed out, or I've got the job description printed out, or I've got it pulled up on another screen that you don't know about. And something kind of old school, what Ulysses had mentioned, I'm a huge fan of post-it notes, which are not showing up now. But yeah, so I love post-it notes. And if you've had an appointment with me, I always recommend that you use these to your advantage. So again, you can only see what I want you to see, but maybe I have written star on a post-it note, which I've placed right above my camera. Or if I always forget to talk about, my 3 strengths or a weakness, I'm going to have a post-it note and I'm going to put it right above. So you, as the recruiter that I'm talking to, I have that visual cue to remember a story that I don't have it rehearsed, but I just kind of keep it in the back of my mind. It's there. It's a visual reminder to me that I'm not alone. So there are some advantages of this virtual interview space. That's all I wanted to mention.
Thank you so much. And if you all would do me a favor, I can't find my reaction button anymore, but would you just throw us a thumbs up if you found that helpful? I did. And actually, Kirby shared some pieces of information that I'm going to make sure that I'm passing on to students. So, just as she said, something that is a challenge and is, initially difficult, we can make it work to our advantage. So I hope you all were taking notes and remembering some of those helpful hacks that she gave us. Okay. I'm going to try to summarize, and Kirby, I'll ask for your help again, please. Um, I'm going to try to summarize all of the tips that we gave because I know there was a lot of information. And then let's open the floor for more questions. So, when you're thinking about interviews, first and foremost, number one, just prepare for the interview itself. As Kirby mentioned, make sure that you're showing the interviewer what you want them to see. If you feel more comfortable using a digital background, which Kirby creates fantastic ones, and I always forget to use them, but if having a virtual Zoom background would make you feel more comfortable, Plan for that in advance, okay? Think about your space as best as possible. I know that we all have limited options these days, but promise your roommates that you'll cook them dinner if they could just go somewhere and be quiet for 30 minutes so you can focus on your interview, and have your space set up in a way that works for you. As Kirby mentioned, it's a great idea to have some water nearby in case your mouth or your throat gets a little bit dry. That was genius what she showed us about how to use post-it notes or a printed copy of your resume. But the first thing, set your space up in a way that works well for you. The second thing, try to anticipate what types of questions you're going to get asked based on what you see from the job posting. Okay. If you can understand as much as possible what the employer is looking for, that's going to give you a preview of the types of questions they're going to ask, because naturally the questions are going to reflect the skills that they want to see in the person that they're going to hire. So spend a lot of time reviewing the job posting, trying to anticipate what types of questions they're going to ask. Number three, practice, practice, practice. And we share with you all some great resources between a scheduled one on one appointment with an advisor like Kirby or myself, or going to drop ins on Tuesdays or Thursdays, or even our friend Sam on the Zoom today reminded us about a big interview. Take the time practicing how you answer the questions, okay? And again, it's not about being perfect. You're a human being with a personality, with experiences. Trust me, you all, employers want to see that. They don't want to talk to a robot, they don't want to talk to an AI system. So don't fret too much about sounding perfect. I think there was a question earlier about how to select words that are clear and concise. It'll come to you the more you practice, okay? And the more you, in my opinion, the more you practice with someone. So if you're short on time and it's 2 a.m. and you just need to get your practice in, go to big interview. But if you have some time, that human interaction with another person can help you feel more comfortable with language and with finding the words, and most of all with using and sticking to that STAR method for answering behavioral interviews. And then the fourth thing, reflect, reflect on your past experiences, and use your resume as a guide, because sometimes you might receive a behavioral interview question based on an experience that you shared in your resume. So if you take the time to think about everything that you've put there, again, it doesn't have to be an internship only, your RSO or student club, student organization experiences make for amazing stories in interviews. Your classes, projects, labs, etc., make for fantastic stories to share during interviews. And if you're thinking about those past experiences, I think examples will come to you a little more easily than you might imagine. And then the final thing, I've said this a little bit throughout. Remember that that interviewer is a human being just like you. But the real secret that you might not know is that they're rooting for you. They want you to do well. I can't tell you how many interviews I had with students over the years. But what I can tell you is that for every single one, deep inside, I wanted that student to just blow me away and do a fantastic job. I wanted that student to feel comfortable, and I wanted them to be able to manage their nerves and to know that I wasn't judging them. I had to do my job and do my best to understand the skills and attributes that they could offer my organization, but I was in no way looking down upon them or expecting them to do poorly. It was quite the opposite. I wanted them to do well, and I also wanted them to enjoy the conversation. So that's a little insider info that I hope will help you relax a little bit. It's rare that you'll find somebody that's intentionally trying to give you a hard time in an interview, but bring your A game no matter what. If they don't give you a smile, that's okay. You deliver that answer with confidence as though they were smiling. And to Kirby's point, not only are you in control of your physical space, you're in control of this mental space. So bring the confidence no matter what type of response you're getting from the interviewer. Um, and if nothing else, I think you'll walk away knowing that you did your best and you gave a representation of yourself that you could feel good about. So I hope that summarizes everything. Kirby, any any other tips that you might add that maybe we haven't covered yet?
I think you covered everything and more. I'd second that. You know, no matter the reaction that you're getting from that recruiter or the panel that's interviewing you, I mean, be yourself, be your authentic self. And you know, I also think sometimes if you're getting no response, that also may be part of the tactic to kind of see how do you deal with someone. You know, let's say you share a really personal story and they say, great. Okay, next question. And they want to see, do you get tripped up on that? So, you know, everything, just assume like as soon as the interview starts, everything in terms of the questions they ask, the kind of body language that they are at least showing on their camera, that could potentially all be part of that hiring process. So don't take it personally. If anything, it's really a win-win situation. If you do well, then maybe you get an offer for an internship or a full-time job. And even if you don't get it, you have that experience. So moving forward, you'll be able to see, oh, this is like that time that this happened. I'm going to keep doing my thing because I know I'm going to find that right opportunity. So keep your head up.